James Carter paced back and forth along the corridor of Piedmont Hospital in Atlanta, the polished soles of his leather shoes echoing in steady thumps across the white-tiled floor. Fluorescent lights glowed on his face, highlighting his worried blue eyes and neatly combed blonde hair. At 32, James was a successful banker living in a cozy suburban townhouse with the woman he loved more than anything, Amara Johnson. Today, after 9 long months of eager anticipation, the moment he had longed for finally arrived. Amara was in the delivery room, about to welcome their first children, triplets, a miracle neither dared dream of when they first began parenthood. James clenched his fists, fingernails digging into his palms. He couldn't stand still. 18 hours had passed since Amara entered labor, and every hour dragged on like a century. He remembered when they discovered she was carrying triplets, her radiant smile as the doctor pointed to the ultrasound screen, 3 tiny figures with steady heartbeats. 3 angels. Amara had whispered, squeezing his hand tightly. James had hugged her right there in the examination room, promising to do everything he could to give their children a whole and happy life. He had spent months painting the nursery a soft yellow, assembling 3 wooden cribs, and even learning how to fold cloth diapers to make Amara laugh. Now standing outside the delivery room, James's heart pounded. He looked at his watch, 2:47 a.m. A nurse stepped out, her smile tired but warm. "Mr. Carter, it's time. Meet your wife and your children." James felt his throat tighten. He pushed the door open and stepped into a room filled with the scent of antiseptic and a gentle dim light. Amara lay in bed, her long black curls damp with sweat, her large brown eyes glistening with emotion. She looked exhausted, but her smile was as radiant as sunlight, melting away all his fears. "James," she whispered, her voice hoarse but full of love. "Look at our babies." 3 small cribs sat beside Amara, each cradling a tiny, delicate life. James stepped closer, his heart swelling with joy to bursting. He leaned over the first crib, where a baby lay curled up, tiny fists clenched. "Nia," Amara said, pride filling her voice. James smiled, ready to stroke his daughter, but then he froze. Nia's skin wasn't the light brown of Amara's, nor was it the pale white of his own. It was a deep, rich brown, smooth and lustrous like ebony under the light. Her hair was tightly curled, her round eyes shining with curiosity. James blinked, feeling as if the floor tilted beneath him. He moved to the second crib where Noah was yawning, his little lips puckered. His skin was like Nia's, dark brown, with no ambiguity. The third crib, where Naomi was stirring gently, was no different. The 3 children, nearly identical, all had deep black skin, soft curly hair, and unmistakable features. James felt his breath grow heavy. He turned to Amara, the smile gone from his lips, replaced by confusion and doubt. "Amara," he said, his voice trembling as he struggled to remain calm. "What is this?" Amara looked up, her eyes briefly showing surprise. "What do you mean, James? These are our children." But James no longer heard gentleness in her voice. His mind was spinning. He had grown up in a small town in Georgia, where everyone in his family had white skin and straight hair. He had never imagined his children would look like this. They don't look like me," he stammered. "Or like you." Amara sat upright, though her body still ached from labor. "James, what are you saying?" "These are our babies. You know I would never—" She trailed off, noticing the doubt in his eyes. The air in the room grew stifling. A nurse nearby bowed her head silently, pretending to arrange the instruments. James took a step back, his hands shaking. 3 black babies. "Amara, do you think I'm going to believe they're mine?" His voice rose, laced with anger and pain. Amara looked at him, her eyes glistening with tears. James, you're hurting me. You were with me through the entire pregnancy. You know how much I've loved you. But her words were drowned by the storm rising within James. He thought of the scrutinizing looks of his mother Helen, who had never fully accepted Amara because of her skin color. She once said this marriage would face trouble, and now that prophecy seemed to be coming true. James felt betrayed, as if the entire world was mocking him. Don't say another word, he cut her off. His voice cold. I need time to think. He turned around and left the room, leaving Amara behind with the 3 newborns softly stirring in their cribs. The door slammed shut behind him, the sound echoing like a declaration their joy had shattered, and a real storm was about to begin. James Carter stormed out of the delivery room, his breathing heavy, as if the air in Piedmont Hospital had become suffocating. The slam of the door behind him echoed through the empty corridor, blending with the pounding of his heart. His mind spun as the images of the 3 babies, Nia, Noah, and Naomi, flashed vividly. Deep brown skin, soft curly hair, wide round eyes that looked nothing like him. They can't be my children, he told himself. No way. But deep down, a small voice whispered, Amara would never lie. He pushed it away, letting his anger and suspicion drown out all reason. He stopped at the corner of the hallway, leaning against the cold white wall, his hands clenched into fists. Memories of Amara flickered before him. Her radiant smile on their wedding day, the way she hummed lullabies while painting the nursery, and the nights she held his hand, whispering dreams of their future. Amara, with her light brown skin and warm brown eyes, was the woman he had loved deeply despite the judgmental stares from his family and friends in the small Georgia town where he grew up. But now, that love seemed unable to erase the image of the 3 babies in the delivery room, 3 children he could not recognize. James pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed his mother Helen. Mom, I need to talk, he said the moment she answered. Her sharp voice, full of judgment, cut through the line. What is it, James? Did she cause more trouble again? James took a deep breath and described what he had just seen. 3 babies, Mom. They're black, not light brown like Amara dark. I don't understand. How could this be? There was a long pause before Helen replied, her voice laced with contempt. I warned you. Marrying her was a mistake. Who knows what she's done behind your back? Her words poured fuel on the fire. James felt his blood rush to his head. He remembered how Helen had always looked at Amara with that cold stare, those veiled comments about their differences. She doesn't belong in our family, she had once said when James announced their engagement. Back then he had brushed it off, defending Amara. But now his mother's doubt cut into his trust like a sharpened blade. You were right, he muttered, voice breaking. I was blind. He returned to the delivery room, his footsteps heavy as though he carried the world's weight. Amara was still there, cradling Naomi in her arms, softly singing a lullaby. Nia and Noah lay quietly in their cribs, tiny hands reaching out as if to touch their mother. Amara's face lit up when she saw James, but her smile faded as she registered his expression. James, are you okay? She asked, her voice trembling, trying to mask the fear within. He didn't answer immediately. He stood there, his icy blue eyes sweeping over the 3 children, then settling on her. Amara, he said, voice low and tense. They're not my children. The words sliced through the air like a blade. Amara froze, holding Naomi tighter. What are you saying? She asked, her voice cracking. These are our babies, James. You know I've never lied to you. But James shook his head, the doubt consuming him. 3 black babies. Amara. Do you think I'm stupid? Look at them. They don't look like me or you." His voice rose, startling a nearby nurse, who quickly left the room. Amara sat upright, though her body still ached from the long labor. Her curls clung to her forehead, but her eyes blazed with determination. "James, you're hurting me," she said, trying to remain calm. "You were with me the whole pregnancy. You know how much I've loved you. We planned for these children together. How can you think I betrayed you?" But James wasn't listening. His mind was filled with the judgmental stares from his hometown, his mother's bitter whispers, and his family's pride in their pure bloodline. He had grown up in a community where skin color dictated your place in the world, and though he had loved Amara deep down, those prejudices had never truly left. "Don't say another word," he cut her off, his voice like ice. "I can't accept this. They're not mine." Amara stared at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "James, you can't do this to me. To our babies," she whispered, her voice choked with sorrow. But James had already turned his back, walking out of the room. "I need time," he said without looking back. "And when I return, you'd better have a better answer." The door closed behind him, leaving Amara in the quiet room, with only Naomi's soft cries and her shattered heartbeat echoing in the silence. James collapsed onto a bench in the corridor, burying his face in his hands. He felt like his entire world was collapsing. He loved Amara. But how could he believe her after what he'd seen? He thought of the future, the stares, the questions from co-workers, his mother's triumphant voice. "I told you so," he could hear her say repeatedly in his head. And in that moment, James made a decision that would change everything. "I want a divorce," he whispered, as if saying it to himself. He had no idea that this decision would tear his family apart and bury a more profound truth waiting to be revealed. 3 days after the emotional storm in the delivery room, Amara Johnson left Piedmont Hospital with her 3 children, Nia, Noah, and Naomi, in her arms. The morning sunlight streamed through the glass doors, but it wasn't enough to warm her heart. James wasn't there to pick her up. No car seats, no warm embrace, like they had once dreamed of when planning for this day. Instead, Amara walked out of the hospital gates, one hand pushing the triple stroller, the other carrying a small bag of belongings. Her eyes were red, but her chin was held high, as if daring the world to judge her with its curious stares. She called a taxi to her Aunt Ruth's house, the only relative in Atlanta who still kept in touch with her. Amara froze when the cab stopped in front of the old apartment building. 3 black trash bags were filled with clothes, books, and personal items on the steps. A note taped to one of the bags bore James's rigid handwriting. "Don't contact me." Amara stood there, the cold wind blowing through her curls, feeling like the earth had opened up and swallowed her whole. James, the man who once knelt to propose in the park, who painted the nursery with a glowing smile, had erased her from his life simply because of their children's skin color. She knelt and checked the bags. Her wedding dress was stuffed with kitchen rags, as if their love was no longer valuable. Amara bit her lip, holding back tears. "Don't cry in front of the babies," she told herself, glancing at Nia, yawning in the stroller, and Noah holding Naomi's hand, as if to comfort her. She picked up the bags and called out for Aunt Ruth. Aunt Ruth, a thin woman with silver hair, embraced Amara immediately. She whispered, "You're not alone, baby girl." But Amara only nodded, not wanting to worry her further. News of James's abandonment spread quickly. His mother Helen called Aunt Ruth with a cold voice. Amara brought this on herself. "Those children aren't my grandchildren. This is what happens when you mix bloodlines." Aunt Ruth hung up furious, but didn't tell Amara, knowing she was already hurting enough. Though unaware of the call, Amara could still feel the contempt radiating from James's family. Helen had never accepted her always referring to her as that girl, instead of using her name, always insinuating that Amara wasn't worthy of her son. Now that hostility had become the final knife, severing any remaining bond between her and James. With no home and no husband, Amara turned to Keisha, her best friend from high school. Keisha, a nurse at a local hospital, lived in a one-bedroom apartment in East Atlanta. "Come here," Keisha said over the phone, her voice firm with resolve. "I'm not letting you and those babies be out on the street." Amara moved in, bringing her 3 children and a few bags. Keisha gave up her bed, but Amara insisted on sleeping on the fold-out couch, keeping Nia, Noah, and Naomi nearby. She tucked blankets around them each night, listened to their steady breathing, and told herself, "I can do this for them." The first days were a nightmare. Amara had no savings. James had managed the family's finances, and she had never questioned him. Their joint account was frozen. Her phone number had been blocked. She went to their old house, hoping to talk, but the door was locked, the curtains drawn. A neighbor looked at her with pity. "James said he doesn't want to see you." Amara turned away, holding Naomi close, feeling like she was somehow the one at fault. Keisha became Amara's most significant source of strength. She cared for the children when Amara went job hunting, helped her write resumes, and even brought home baby formula from the hospital. "You're stronger than you think," Keisha told her one night, as Amara cried at the kitchen table. "James doesn't deserve you, but those babies do. Don't let him break your spirit." Amara wiped her tears and nodded. She looked at Nia sleeping, her tiny lips pursed, and felt a fire spark within her. "I won't fall apart," she said firmly. Amara began rebuilding her life from scratch. She got a job washing dishes at a nearby restaurant, working the night shift so she could care for her children during the day. The pay was meager, but she saved every penny buying used diapers and second-hand clothes for the babies. Every morning she kissed Nia, Noah, and Naomi on the forehead and whispered, "You are everything to me. I will give you the world." But deep down, she couldn't stop wondering, why was their skin darker than hers? Was it her mixed heritage? Black mother, white father, or something in James's background he didn't know? The question haunted her, but she pushed it aside to focus on surviving. One evening when Aunt Ruth visited, she took Amara's hand and said, "You don't need him. But if you want to fight back, find the truth. Not for him, for the babies." Amara nodded, her eyes glinting with determination. She didn't know the truth yet, but swore she would protect her children, no matter the cost. As she held Naomi close and hummed a lullaby under the dim light of the apartment, Amara felt a new strength rising within her. She had been abandoned, but she was not alone. And her story, the story of Nia, Noah, and Naomi, was beginning. The flickering neon light in the small kitchen of Soul Food Haven cast a pale glow as Amara Johnson wiped the sweat from her brow, her hands moving quickly through the towering stack of dishes. It had been 3 months since she left the hospital with Nia, Noah, and Naomi, her triplets, who were now the center of her world. Working the 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. shift left her exhausted, but Amara had no choice. With the money she earned, she had to pay rent for her corner of Keisha's apartment, buy diapers, and ensure her children didn't go without. Every night, as the clinking of plates mingled with the soft jazz from the restaurant's old radio, Amara whispered to herself, "Just one more day. I can make it one more day." Amara's life had become a relentless cycle. During the day, she cared for Nia, Noah, and Naomi in Keisha's cramped apartment. The room had only a small window, its weak light falling across the worn carpet where the 3 children played. Amara used every moment to teach them, showing Nia how to stack wooden blocks, singing lullabies to calm Noah, and telling stories to Naomi, who was always curious about everything. She sewed dresses for Nia from old t-shirts turned torn jeans into shorts for Noah, and tied Naomi's hair with colorful elastic bands. These small acts, though time-consuming, were how Amara showed her children love, even when she had nothing else to give but herself. Money was the biggest problem. James had locked their joint account, and Amara had no resources to take legal action. She sold her engagement ring, the one James had given her on a snowy night in an Atlanta park, to pay the first month's rent. The jeweler looked at her with pity as he handed her $200, but Amara only offered a faint smile and said, "I need money more than memories." She counted every cent each week, dividing it to cover baby formula diapers and food. Some days, she survived on leftover bread from the restaurant, saving the real meals for Keisha and the kids. "You've got to eat, Amara," Keisha scolded, but Amara just shook her head. "The kids need to grow up strong. I'll be fine." Keisha was the light in Amara's darkest days. As a day shift nurse, she often brought home leftover food from the hospital or hand-me-down clothes from coworkers for the babies. She played with Nia, Noah, and Naomi so Amara could catch her breath. One evening, when Amara returned from her shift so tired she nearly dropped her keys, Keisha greeted her with hot tea. "You're a superhero, you know that," Keisha said, her voice full of admiration. Amara smiled weakly, but inside she felt like she was falling apart. She missed the way James used to rub her back when she was tired, how he laughed when she sang off key. But then she remembered his words at the hospital, "They're not mine," and her heart turned cold. Though she stayed strong for her children, Amara couldn't escape the questions that haunted her each night. Why did Nia, Noah, and Naomi have such deep brown skin, darker than hers or James's? Amara's mother was black and her father white, so her light brown complexion was a natural blend. She had expected the children to be similar or lighter if they resembled James, but the triplets with their ebony-toned skin and tightly curled hair seemed to carry a more profound legacy. She wondered, was there something in her bloodline she didn't know? Or was James, with all his pride in his pure ancestry, hiding a truth of his own? One morning while Amara took the kids to the nearby park, an older woman stopped smiling at Nia as she chased butterflies. "She's such a beautiful child," the woman said, then hesitated. "Are you the adoptive mother?" The innocent question cut like a blade. Amara forced a smile. "No, they're mine." The woman blushed and apologized, but Amara could feel the curious stares of others nearby. It wasn't the first time she'd faced such questions. In stores, on the bus, even in the neighborhood, people looked at her and the triplets with suspicion, as if she owed them an explanation for how her children looked. Amara held them tighter each time and whispered, "You are your mother's miracles. Don't let anyone say otherwise." Aunt Ruth visited that weekend, bringing a pot of chicken soup and heartfelt advice. Sitting on the sofa, she took Amara's hand and said, "You can't live in doubt forever. If not for yourself, then for the kids. Find out what happened. It might not be anyone's fault, but the truth will free you." Amara looked at her eyes shining. She thought of Nia, Noah, and Naomi, their radiant smiles, their warm hugs, and knew she wasn't just living for herself. "I'll find out, Auntie," she said firmly, "not to prove anything to James, but so my children know who they are." Once the children were asleep that night, Amara sat under the dim apartment light, staring at a photo of her and James on their wedding day. She gently touched his face in the image, wondering where the man who once promised to love her forever had gone. Then she folded the photo and placed it in a box. "I don't need him," she whispered. She looked at Nia, Noah, and Naomi sleeping soundly, with their little hands intertwined, and felt a new strength rise within her. Life might be harsh, but Amara would not break. She would fight not just to survive, but to uncover the truth for her children, a truth waiting buried deep in their blood. Amara Johnson sat on the fold-out sofa in Keisha's small apartment, the dim light from a desk lamp casting a glow on her face, highlighting the deep contemplation in her brown eyes. It had been 3 months since James Carter abandoned her, and with each passing day, Amara felt stronger, but also heavier with questions left unanswered. Nia, Noah, and Naomi, her triplets, were sleeping soundly in the corner of the room, their steady breaths like a lullaby soothing her heart. But tonight, as the world fell silent, Amara couldn't stop thinking about her origins, James's, and those of their children, roots that had shattered her family, but might also hold the key to healing it. Amara had grown up in a multi-ethnic neighborhood in East Atlanta, where wooden houses squeezed beside small storefronts and gospel music echoed from churches every Sunday. Her mother, Clara, was a Black American elementary school teacher with dark brown skin and a warm smile. Her father, Thomas, was a white American mechanic with light brown hair and the signature blue eyes of his Irish ancestors. Together, they had created Amara, with her light brown skin, soft curly hair, and an open heart that learned to love both sides of her heritage. But not everyone accepted that mixture. At school, she was teased for being not black enough or not white enough. But her mother always said, "You are who you are, and that's the most beautiful thing." Childhood memories flooded back as Amara looked at Naomi, whose tiny hand was curled around Noah's in sleep. She had always thought her children would have light brown skin like hers, or even lighter if they resembled James. But Nia, Noah, and Naomi, with their deep brown ebony-like skin and tightly coiled curls, seemed to be telling a different story. Amara never doubted her maternal bond. She felt her children in every heartbeat, but she had begun to wonder if there was something hidden in her lineage she'd never known. Or was it James, with pride in his pure ancestry, who carried a secret he didn't even realize? James Carter, in Amara's memory, was a man of contradictions. He had grown up in a small town outside Georgia, where white families clung to their American heritage and interracial couples were still viewed with suspicion. The Carter family, led by his mother Helen, boasted endlessly of their English and German ancestry, telling stories of great-grandfathers who were plantation owners and great-grandmothers who were philanthropists. James was raised to believe he embodied that lineage: blonde hair, blue eyes, porcelain skin. Helen often spoke of his father, William Carter, a successful businessman, as a symbol of perfection. But Amara remembered strange moments in their marriage times, when Helen avoided talking about her youth, or when Amara caught her looking at James with a nervous gaze, as if afraid he might discover something. One particular memory nagged at Amara. During their wedding reception, an old friend of Helen's, drunk and speaking too freely, had blurted out, "Helen used to be crazy about a black saxophone player at that downtown club before she married William." Everyone laughed it off, assuming it was a joke, but Amara remembered Helen's face going pale, and how she quickly changed the subject. At the time, Amara hadn't thought much of it, but now that comment echoed in her mind. Could Helen have hidden something about James's birth father? Could that explain why her children had dark brown skin? Truth buried deep in James's bloodline. Amara stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the dark streets of Atlanta. She thought about James, about how he once loved her. He had fought his family to marry her despite Helen's objections. He had held her under the moonlight, promising to build a happy family. But when confronted with the color of Nia, Noah, and Naomi's skin, he had let prejudice win. Amara couldn't forgive him, but she wondered if he too had been a victim of a much bigger lie, one that had started in his own family. Keisha, her loyal friend and constant support, noticed the weight Amara carried. One morning, as they sipped coffee while the kids played, Keisha said, "You keep thinking about the babies, don't you? I'm a nurse. I know how genetics can be tricky. Sometimes genes from your ancestry pop up unexpectedly, especially in multi-ethnic families." Amara nodded, but her eyes remained distant. "I don't doubt they're mine and James's," she said. "But I need to know why. Not to prove anything to him, but so my kids grow up with the truth." During her next visit, Aunt Ruth brought an old photo album. She pointed to a picture of Amara's mother, Clara, and said, "Your mom had a great aunt in Louisiana. Dark skin, tight curls like the baby's. Maybe that heritage lives on in them." Amara gently touched the photo, feeling a connection to her ancestors. But she knew the answer wasn't just in her bloodline. She said, "Auntie, I don't think James knows everything about his family." Aunt Ruth nodded, her gaze sharp. "Then you need to find out, Amara. The truth will set your babies free, and it will set you free too." That night, Amara lay on the sofa, holding Naomi, listening to the soft breaths of Nia and Noah. She thought about Aunt Ruth's words about the story of the saxophone player and the panicked look in Helen's eyes. A new resolve ignited within her. She wouldn't just survive, she would uncover the truth. So her children would know who they were. So she could move forward. Under the dim light of the apartment, Amara whispered to her children, "I will give you an answer, no matter how long it takes." She didn't know that the truth waiting for her would change everything. Amara Johnson sat at the small kitchen table in Keisha's apartment, a cup of cold coffee in front of her. The flickering fluorescent light above cast a pale glow over her face, where lines of exhaustion mingled with a steady, determined gaze. It had been 6 months since James Carter abandoned her, and though life remained a daily struggle, Amara felt a new fire burning within her. Nia, Noah, and Naomi, her now 6-month-old triplets, were playing on the worn carpet in the corner, their bright laughter like medicine for her weary heart. But the questions about their origins, the deep brown skin, the tight curls, and the wide, curious eyes that resembled neither her nor James, continued to haunt her every night. Aunt Ruth's words from the week before echoed in her mind. "The truth will set you free." Amara knew her aunt was right. Not because she wanted to prove anything to James, the man who had erased her from his life with a cruelty she could never explain, but because she needed the truth for Nia, Noah, and Naomi. So that one day, when her children asked, "Who are we?" she could answer with pride, not uncertainty. She looked at Noah carefully, stacking blocks, and Naomi humming a melody of her invention. Little Nia tugged at her sleeve as if sensing her mother's mood. Amara smiled, brushed back her daughter's hair, and whispered, "I'll find the answer for you." The decision came one Saturday morning when Keisha returned from the hospital with a flyer. Keisha said, "This is a genetic testing lab downtown," placing the paper on the table. "They do DNA analysis for ancestry and parentage. It's not cheap, but if you want answers, it's worth it." Amara picked up the flyer, tracing the bold words, "Discover your heritage." She didn't have much. Her dishwashing job barely covered living expenses, but she had saved a small amount from working extra shifts. "I have to do this," she told Keisha with resolve. "Not just for me, for the kids." Keisha nodded, her eyes bright with support. "I know you will. Just be ready. The truth might not be what you expect." Amara nodded. With her nurse's experience, Keisha had seen more than her share of surprising genetic results. "I'm not afraid," Amara said, though a flicker of anxiety stirred in her chest. What if the results revealed something she couldn't explain? But then she looked at Nia, cradling Naomi with affection, and the fear faded. "Whatever the truth is, I'll face it." Amara called the lab and scheduled an appointment for the following week. The woman on the other end of the line had a warm voice and explained the process. They would collect saliva samples from Amara and the children and analyze their DNA for lineage and relationships. The woman said, "We can also match with our genetic database to explore ancestry connections." Amara hesitated, then asked, "If I want to test whether the father is related, what do I need?" The woman replied, "Ideally, we would have his DNA sample. However, if not, we can still analyze maternal and child samples to identify gaps." Amara bit her lip. She had no intention of contacting James, but the thought of him still stung. Amara picked up extra shifts at the restaurant to afford the test scrubbing dishes until her hands were swollen and red. She also sold a silver bracelet, her mother's graduation gift, for $50. Each night when she returned to the apartment, she held her children close and told them stories of imaginary adventures, Nia as a princess, Noah as a knight, and Naomi as a poet. Those moments reminded her that every sacrifice was worth it. One evening, when Keisha saw Amara rubbing her aching hands, she said, "You don't have to do this alone. I'll pitch in for the test." But Amara shook her head and smiled. "Thank you, but this is mine to do. I want to do it myself." On the day of the test, Amara pushed the triple stroller into a sleek glass building in downtown Atlanta. Nia, Noah, and Naomi, dressed in her cleanest clothes, looked around curiously. A young technician named Maya greeted them and led them into the sampling room. "Don't worry, it's just spitting into a tube," Maya said, handing Amara a kit. Amara completed her part, then gently took samples from the babies, calming Noah as he squirmed. "Just a second, sweetheart," she whispered. Maya smiled and said, "You're an incredible mom. Many people come here looking for answers, but not all of them are as strong as you." Amara felt a weight lift from her shoulders as she left the lab. She had taken the first step, even if the results might take weeks. On the bus ride home, she held Naomi in her arms and watched Nia and Noah doze in the stroller. An older woman beside her smiled and said, "Your children are beautiful. You must be so proud." Amara nodded, her eyes sparkling. "Yes, they're my whole world." But deep inside, she wondered, would the truth change how she saw her children? Or would it change how she saw James, the man who destroyed their family? That night, lying on the sofa, Amara listened to the steady breathing of her babies. She thought of James, his angry eyes in the hospital, and the story of the saxophone player that Helen had tried to bury. A strong intuition rose in her. The truth wasn't just inside her or the children. It was also within James, and the secrets his family had long hidden. She whispered into the darkness, "Whatever it is, I'll find it, my babies. And I'll make sure you grow up knowing the truth." That risky decision became the flame that would guide her through the darkness, bringing her closer to the answers that would change everything. Rain tapped gently against the window of Keisha's small apartment, where Amara Johnson sat on the fold-out sofa, a white envelope from the genetic testing lab resting in front of her. It had been 3 weeks since she and her 3 children. Nia, Noah, and Naomi submitted their DNA samples, and each day of waiting had been a quiet ordeal. Amara still worked the night shift at Soul Food Haven, scrubbing dishes until her hands swelled red, but her mind never strayed far from that envelope, a small object carrying answers that could change everything. Nia, Noah, and Naomi, now nearly a year old, played on the old carpet nearby, their joyful laughter momentarily easing the knot of anxiety in Amara's chest. She picked up the envelope, her fingers trembling. She sacrificed so much to reach this point. Extra shifts, her mother's silver bracelet, and countless sleepless nights wondering if the truth was worth chasing. Keisha, the loyal friend who had never left her side, sat beside her with a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Open it, Amara." Keisha said, her voice soft but firm. "Whatever it says, you'll get through it." Amara nodded, took a deep breath, and tore it open. The pages inside were filled with charts and figures, complex genetic data, but the summary at the top struck her like lightning. The results confirmed that Nia, Noah, and Naomi were the biological children of Amara and James Carter, with 99.9% certainty. No infidelity, no mistake. Amara exhaled sharply, tears glimmering in her eyes. She had never honestly doubted her children, but this confirmation lifted a boulder off her chest. She looked at Nia stacking wooden blocks with focused determination, and Naomi humming a tune of her invention. Noah, the mischief maker, was trying to pull his sister's arm. "You are mine," she whispered, smiling through tears, "all of you." But what came next in the report left her speechless. The ancestry analysis revealed that Amara was 48% Sub-Saharan African, 45% European, and 7% Native American, consistent with her known mixed heritage. But James, who had always taken pride in his pure English and German lineage, had completely different results. 60% Sub-Saharan African, 35% European, and 5% Native American. Amara blinked, rereading it, thinking she'd misunderstood. James, with his blonde hair, blue eyes, and porcelain skin, was of more than half African descent. How was it possible? She turned the page. A deeper breakdown of the data clarified everything. Based on their database analysis, James's DNA had an intense match with a man named Leroy Brown, a black saxophone player who had performed in Atlanta the year James was born. The Y chromosome analysis confirmed that Leroy Brown, not William Carter, as Helen had always claimed, was James's biological father. Amara's hands shook as she remembered the joke told at her wedding. Helen used to be crazy about some black sax player. It wasn't a joke. It was the truth, buried for over 3 decades. Amara sat motionless, the sound of rain streaking across the window. She thought of James in the hospital, his voice cold. "They're not my children." He had destroyed their family and thrown her out, all because of the color of their children's skin, a color that now reflected his hidden heritage. This truth didn't just explain her children's appearance. It exposed a much deeper lie. James didn't know who he was. Helen had built an entire narrative around William Carter to conceal her affair with Leroy Brown. And James, raised in a home of prejudice and illusion, had paid for that lie with his happiness. Keisha noticed the expression on Amara's face. "You okay?" "What did it say?" she asked. Amara handed her the report, voice trembling. "They're James's." "But James, he's not who he thinks he is." Keisha skimmed it, her eyes going wide. "Oh my God. Amara, your mother-in-law lied his whole life. James is black, at least in large part, and he blamed you for it." Amara nodded slowly, feeling both relieved and furious. She was relieved because her children were no longer a mystery. Furious because James had let ignorance and prejudice ruin everything they'd built together. She stood and walked over to her children, scooping Naomi into her arms. Naya and Noah looked up, their smiles radiant. "You are not a mistake," she whispered. "You are the truth, the most beautiful truth I've ever seen." But deep inside, a new question took shape. What should I do with this truth? She didn't want to contact James. He didn't deserve it. But she knew he had to know. Not to save their marriage, but to force him to face himself. She thought of Helen, the woman who had planted the seeds of prejudice in James's heart, and a new surge of anger rose within her. That woman hadn't just broken her family and her son. Aunt Ruth came by the next day. After reading the report, she took Amara's hand. "You found the truth," she said. "Now protect it. Not for him, for the babies." Amara nodded, eyes sharp with purpose. She made a copy of the report, placed it in a fresh envelope, and addressed it to James's home. She didn't include a note. Truth doesn't need explanation. She dropped the envelope into the mailbox and felt a new strength settle into her bones. She didn't know how James would react, but she knew one thing. The truth had been set free, and like light through darkness, it would find its way to him. Amara held her children close that night, humming lullabies beneath the apartment's dim glow. She thought of Leroy Brown, the musician she had never met, and wondered if he knew he had a son. She thought of James, and her heart ached, not with betrayal anymore, but with sorrow for a man who had lost himself. "I will give you a future," she whispered to Nia, Noah, and Naomi. and the truth will always be our light. She didn't yet know that across the city, the envelope was already on its way to James, carrying not just paper, but the weight of an awakening storm. Amara Johnson stood in Keisha's small apartment, the dim light casting soft shadows across her face, where resilience intertwined with unhealed pain. And a week had passed since she sent James Carter a copy of the DNA test results, the man who had cast her and their 3 children, Nia, Noah, and Naomi, out of his life, simply because of the color of their skin. That report containing the shocking truth that James was 60% of sub-Saharan African descent, and that his biological father was a black saxophone player named Leroy Brown, left Amara feeling both relieved and furious. She hadn't sent the report to save their marriage. She sent it so James could confront the truth about himself, the lie he had lived, and the prejudice that had destroyed their family. Nia, Noah, and Naomi, now over a year old, were playing on the old carpet, their laughter like a soothing balm. Amara watched them, remembering the moment in the hospital when James turned his back, his voice cold. "They're not mine." She had spent months questioning herself, doubting her reality. But the DNA test had set her free. The children were hers and James's. Their dark skin wasn't a mystery, it was his legacy. A legacy he had denied. And now that the envelope had reached James, Amara wondered, what would he do with the truth? The answer came on a Wednesday morning, when Amara's phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She hesitated, then picked up. Amara. The voice on the other end trembled, familiar and heartbreaking. "It's me, James." Her heart clenched. She said nothing, gripping the phone tightly as she waited. "I got the report," James continued, his voice choked. I didn't know. My mother lied to me. About my father. About everything. I don't know who I am anymore." Amara bit her lip, anger rising. "So why are you calling James?" she asked coldly. "To apologize? Or to keep blaming me?" There was a long pause. "I was wrong," James whispered. "Wrong not to trust you. Wrong to throw you out. I see the kids in my dreams, Amara. Nia, Noah, Naomi. I see their eyes, and now I know they're mine. I ruined everything." His words were like a blade, painful yet sincere. Tears welled up in Amara's eyes, but she wiped them away. She wouldn't let herself break. "You didn't just destroy our family, James," she said, voice firm. "You destroyed me. You called me a liar. You left me on the street with 3 children. Do you think a phone call can fix that? I don't expect forgiveness," James replied, his voice cracking. "But I want to make things right. I want to meet the kids, Amara. I want to know them. Please." Amara was silent, watching Nia scribble with a crayon. Noah pushes a toy truck, and Naomi hums a tune. They didn't know James. He was a stranger, and she had sworn to protect them from any harm. But deep down, she knew Nia, Noah, and Naomi would ask about their father one day. She couldn't take that answer away from them. After a long moment, she said, "Piedmont Park, Sunday, 10 a.m. Don't expect much, James. The kids don't know you, and I'm not promising anything." James exhaled, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Amara. I'll be there." She hung up, feeling as if she'd just walked through fire. She wasn't sure if she'd made the right choice, but she knew she wanted her children to have the chance, however small, to understand their father. When Keisha heard the news, she frowned. "Are you sure about this? He doesn't deserve it." Amara nodded, her gaze distant. "I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for the kids. If he wants to be a father, he must prove it." Aunt Ruth came by that evening, took Amara's hand and said, "You're stronger than I thought, but be careful. Truth can change a man, but not always in a good way." Amara offered a weak smile. I know, Auntie, but this time I'm in control. In the days leading up to the meeting, Amara prepared herself emotionally. She told the children about a special friend they'd met in the park, using a cheerful voice to keep them at ease. She picked clean, bright-colored second-hand clothes for them, brushing their hair and checking their shoes. She looked at them, her heart bursting with pride. They were her light. And whatever James became in their lives, if he became anything, she would never let him hurt them again. The night before the meeting, Amara didn't sleep. She sat under the dim light holding Naomi, thinking of James. She remembered how he once painted the nursery, whispering to her belly, "Daddy's waiting for you." She remembered his smile, and also his fury when he walked away. The truth had changed him, but had it changed his heart? She didn't know. But as she watched Naya and Noah sleep, their tiny hands entwined, she whispered, "I'll protect you, no matter what." She didn't know that across the city James wasn't sleeping either. He sat silently, holding the DNA report in his hands, confronting a past he had never known, and a future he had to fight to reclaim. The gentle light of early autumn filtered through the trees in Piedmont Park, where Amara Johnson pushed the triple stroller. Nia, Noah, and Naomi wore bright-colored second-hand clothes. Today was Sunday, the day she had agreed to let James Carter, the man who had abandoned her and their children more than a year ago, see the kids for the first time. Amara strolled, her heart pounding, scanning the park, as if searching for a sign of him. She wasn't sure she was ready, but she was doing this for Nia, Noah, and Naomi, so they wouldn't have to ask who their father was one day. She whispered to Naomi, who held her hand, "It'll be okay today, sweetheart." James stood near a wooden bench, looking nothing like the confident man Amara once knew. He wore a plain blue shirt, his blonde hair disheveled, and his blue eyes filled with nervous tension. He held a small paper bag containing picture books and a few toys. He froze when he saw Amara and the children, as if afraid to shatter the moment. Amara stopped a few meters away, her gaze sharp. "James," she said, her voice calm but cold, "they don't know you. Please don't do anything to scare them." James nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you, Amara," he said hoarsely. He knelt at eye level with the children and offered a weak smile. Nia, the oldest, clung to Amara's leg, her round eyes fixed on the stranger. Noah, always curious, tilted his head, while Naomi, open-hearted as ever, stepped forward and asked, "Who are you?" The innocent question made James blink as if it struck him deep. "I'm a friend," he said softly. "I brought you some books." He pulled out a picture book about dinosaurs, hoping it might catch Noah's interest. Amara stood still, gripping the stroller handle. She saw the sincerity in James's eyes, but couldn't forget the garbage bags he had left on Aunt Ruth's porch, or his voice in the hospital. "They're not mine." She stood as both protector and witness, ready to step in if James crossed any line. But the children, in their innocence, gradually opened up. Noah, drawn in by the dinosaur book, stepped closer and pointed at a T-Rex. "What does it eat?" James, seizing the moment, replied, "It eats meat, but don't worry, it's not around here anymore." Noah laughed loudly, and Amara felt a strange sensation. Relief perhaps, but still wrapped in caution. Nia remained hesitant, clinging to Amara, but Naomi, the little music lover, began humming a song and dancing around James. He pulled a small ball from the bag and gently rolled it to her. Naomi giggled, kicked it back, and in that moment, James smiled a genuine smile, no longer forced. Amara watched him, and her heart ached. She remembered that smile from the days they painted the nursery, when he whispered to her belly, "Daddy's waiting for you." But she quickly pushed the memory aside. He was no longer that James. The visit lasted 30 minutes short, but enough for James to feel the presence of his children. He didn't try to force them to call him Dad or overstep his bounds. When Nia finally approached and took a book from his hand, James looked at Amara with gratitude. "They're incredible," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You've done so well, Amara." She nodded and replied, "They're incredible because they're themselves. If you want to be a part of their lives, you'll have to prove it, James. Not today. Every day." James stood nodding slowly. "I'll try," he said. "I promise." Amara didn't respond. She pushed the stroller and walked away, leaving James standing there watching her and the children fade into the distance. On the way home, Naomi asked Will that man come back. "Mama." Amara brushed her daughter's hair and answered, "If he keeps his promise, sweetheart." But deep down, she wasn't sure if she wanted him to return. When Amara told Keisha about the meeting, Keisha sighed. Did he seem sincere? Amara shrugged. Maybe. But sincerity isn't enough. I need to see action. Aunt Ruth, visiting that evening, smiled gently. "You were right to give him a chance. Just don't let him back into your heart too soon." Amara nodded, her gaze distant. She thought of the DNA report, the truth that James carried African heritage, a heritage he had denied when he looked at his children. He had changed, but had he changed deeply enough? In the weeks that followed, James began showing up regularly. He came to the park every Sunday, bringing books, toys, and sometimes cookies he baked himself. He learned that Noah loved dinosaurs, that Nia liked purple, and that Naomi could sing all day. He never pressured the kids to call him Dad. He listened, played, and stayed patient. One afternoon, when Noah tripped and burst into tears, James gently picked him up, wiped away the tears, and held him close. And from a distance, Amara saw a tenderness she had once loved in him. She watched from afar, her heart swaying between caution and hope. She had not forgiven James, but she saw he was trying. She held Nia, Noah, and Naomi close every night and whispered, "Mama will always protect you." She didn't know if James could become the father they needed, but she knew one thing for sure. She would never let him hurt them again. Under the dim apartment light, Amara felt a new strength rising, the strength of a mother and a woman rewriting her story. The pale moonlight filtered through the window of Keisha's small apartment, where Amara Johnson sat on the fold-out sofa, a cup of cold tea in her hands. It had been 3 months since James Carter reunited with their children, Nia, Noah, and Naomi, at Piedmont Park. Their Sunday visits had since become a routine part of their lives. James, the man who once threw her out with garbage bags and accusations, now appeared each week with picture books, homemade cookies, and a patience Amara had never seen in him before. But tonight, with the children sound asleep, Amara knew it was time for an honest conversation, not just about the kids, but the wounds he had left in her heart. James arrived at 9 p.m., after texting to ask permission. When Amara opened the door, her gaze was sharp, though not as cold as before. He looked worn, his blonde hair tousled, his blue eyes filled with worry and determination. "Thank you for agreeing to talk," he said quietly. Amara nodded, gesturing to the chair across the kitchen table. "Sit down," she said evenly. "But don't expect this to be easy." James nodded, sitting down, his fingers tightly clasped, as if trying to contain himself. The air was heavy, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. Amara took a deep breath and then began. "James, you hurt me deeply," she said, eyes fixed on him. "You called me a liar. You threw me out with 3 newborns. I doubted myself. I thought my body had betrayed you. Do you know what I went through? I slept on a couch, ate leftovers, and sold my wedding ring to feed our kids." Her voice trembled, eyes shimmering with tears, but she didn't stop. "You destroyed me, James, and now you show up wanting to be a father. as if that erases everything. James bowed his head, his hands clenched so tight, his knuckles turned white. "I know," he whispered, voice breaking. "I know I was wrong. When I saw the kids in the hospital, I was afraid. I grew up hearing my mother say our family was pure, and that skin color defined everything. I let prejudice blind me, Amara. I didn't believe you. That's the thing I regret most." He looked up, his eyes red. "I didn't know about my father, about Leroy Brown. My mother lied my entire life, and I let her lie destroy our family." Amara shook her head, anger still burning quietly. "Don't blame your mother, James. You turned away. You chose not to believe me even when I loved you with everything I had." She paused, breathing deeply to keep steady. "Do you remember the day you proposed? In the snow in the park? You promised to protect me forever. But when I needed you most, you left me with 3 babies. No home, no money, nothing." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she wiped them away. She wouldn't let him see her break. James stood and moved closer, but stopped when Amara raised her hand to halt him. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said, voice cracking. "But I want you to know, I'm trying to change for the kids, because I want to be the man you once loved." I confronted my mother, Amara. She admitted the truth about Leroy Brown, but she has no remorse. She said she was protecting me. But I don't want to live in that lie anymore. I want to be Nia, Noah, and Naomi's father. And if you'll let me, I want to make things right. Amara looked at him, her heart caught between pain and a flicker of hope. She thought of the children, how Noah laughed when James pushed him on the swing, how Naomi sang for him, and how even cautious Nia had started to reach for his hand. "They're starting to love you," she said softly. "But I don't know if I can trust you again. If you want to be their father, you must prove it, not just to them, but to me. You need to show me you're not the man who left us." James nodded, eyes glistening. "I will, Amara, no matter how long it takes." He reached into his pocket and handed her a small notebook. "I've been writing about them and what I've learned. Noah loves dinosaurs. Nia is obsessed with purple, and Naomi can sing all day. I want to remember everything so I never forget again." Amara took the notebook and flipped through the pages. The handwriting was messy, but the content was heartfelt. Naomi dancing Noah, telling T-Rex stories. Nia drawing purple flowers. She closed the book saying nothing, but a small part of her heart softened. She stood, signaling the conversation was over. "Go home, James," she said. "Sunday, the park. As usual. Don't disappoint them." James nodded, walking to the door. But before leaving, he turned back. "I love you, Amara," he said quietly. "I don't deserve you, but I won't stop trying." Amara didn't answer. She closed the door and leaned against it, tears silently falling. She didn't know if she could forgive him, but she knew the children deserved the chance. When Amara told Keisha about the conversation, Keisha hugged her tightly. "You're stronger than anyone I know," she said. "If he means it, you'll see it. But don't open your heart too fast." Amara nodded, looking at Nia, Noah, and Naomi sleeping peacefully. She whispered, "I'll protect you, and I won't let my heart break again." Under the dim moonlight, Amara felt a new strength rising, not just to protect her children, but to confront the past and begin building the future. Amara Johnson stood in Keisha's small apartment as the morning light filtered through the window, casting a soft glow across her face, where quiet strength met a trace of weariness. It had been 4 months since the raw, honest conversation with James Carter, the husband who had once abandoned her and their 3 children, Nia, Noah, and Naomi, simply because of the color of their skin. Sunday visits at Piedmont Park had become a routine, with James bringing books, toys, and a steady patience as he worked to rebuild a relationship with the children. But today, a new storm was brewing, not between Amara and James, but from the world around them, as the truth about James's origins came to light. Nia, Noah, and Naomi, now nearly 2 years old, played on the worn rug, their laughter easing the tension in the air. Amara watched them, reflecting on her journey from sleeping on couches and selling her wedding ring to survive, to sending James the DNA results that revealed he was 60% of sub-Saharan African descent and the biological son of black jazz saxophonist Leroy Brown. That truth had transformed James, but Amara never expected it would leak out, becoming a topic of gossip in their Atlanta community. It all began with a blog post by Keisha, Amara's closest friend. A nurse by profession, Keisha often shared personal reflections about health and family on a local forum. One night, after hearing Amara's story of reclaiming her children's truth, Keisha wrote an anonymous and heartfelt post about a strong single mother who overcame prejudice to uncover her children's heritage. Though the story used no names, the part about a man who identified as white but discovered African ancestry captured attention. The forum exploded with comments. Someone connected to the Carter family recognized the story. Within days, rumors swept through the neighborhood. A local paper picked up the story with the headline, "Atlanta Man Discovers True Origins After Rejecting His Children." Though no names were mentioned, anyone who knew James and Amara could guess. When Keisha showed Amara the article, Amara sighed. "I didn't want this," she said. "I just wanted to raise my kids in peace." Keisha hugged her, apologetic. "It didn't spread like this. But you did nothing wrong. The truth deserves to be known." Amara nodded, but worried about how this might affect Nia, Noah, and Naomi as they grew older. Meanwhile, James faced a storm of his own. Whispers started at the bank where he worked. Clients looked at him differently. One morning, he received a furious call from his mother, Helen. Her voice trembled with rage. "What have you done, James? The entire city is talking about us." Now more grounded in the truth of his parentage, James replied coldly, "You're the one who lied, not me. You hid my father, Leroy Brown, and raised me on prejudice. Please don't blame me for revealing the truth." Helen screamed, "I protected you." James hung up. He didn't want to hear any more. For the first time, he felt free, even if it came at the cost of losing his mother. Amara refused all interview requests from the press, determined to shield her children from public scrutiny. However, she agreed to speak at a women's support group at the local church, where she said, "I raise my children out of love, not to prove anything. They are my light, and I will protect them from anyone, including their father." Her words spread on social media, inspiring others. Aunt Ruth, hearing the news, held Amara's hand. "You turned your pain into strength," she said. "Your children will grow up knowing that." Despite the pressure, James continued coming to the park every Sunday. He brought a kite for Noah, a box of purple crayons for Nia, and a music book for Naomi. The children were growing used to him, even if they still called him Mr. James. One afternoon, when Naomi sang a tune he had taught her, James looked at Amara with gratitude. "Thank you for giving me this chance," he said. Amara nodded but replied, "Don't thank me. Be worthy of them." She saw that he was trying, but her heart remained guarded, unwilling to risk reopening old wounds. Feeling guilty about the blog post, Keisha organized a small dinner at home with Amara, Aunt Ruth, and the children. Under the glow of warm candlelight, she said, "I'm proud of you, Amara. You're not just a mother, you're a guiding light." Amara smiled, hugging Nia, Noah, and Naomi close. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "You and Auntie are my family." The dinner ended with the children's laughter, and Amara felt a rare sense of peace for the first time in a long while. The truth had broken free, but it hadn't broken her. It had made her stronger. That night, Amara lay on the sofa holding Naomi, watching Nia and Noah sleep peacefully. She thought of James Helen and Leroy Brown, the father James would never know. She whispered to her children, "You are the legacy of love, not of prejudice. And I'll make sure you always know that." She didn't know that across the city, James was also sitting quietly gazing at a photo of Nia, Noah, and Naomi, determined to become the father they deserved. The small backyard of Keisha's apartment bloomed with color in the golden light of sunset. Red, yellow, and blue balloons danced gently in the breeze. Today was the third birthday of Nia, Noah, and Naomi and Amara Johnson had transformed the modest space into a wonderland for her children. A wooden table draped in paper cloth was covered with cookies, candy, and 3 small birthday cakes, each decorated according to a child's favorite: a purple cake for Nia, a dinosaur cake for Noah, and a star-sprinkled cake for Naomi. Children's music played from an old Bluetooth speaker, blending with the laughter of friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate. Amara stood near the table, her eyes sparkling with pride as she watched Nia, Noah, and Naomi dart around the yard. With her hair in 2 braids, Nia led a game of tag. Noah, energetic and mischievous, was trying to blow soap bubbles, while Naomi, the little music lover, twirled to the rhythm of the songs. 3 years ago, when Amara had left the hospital with her babies, homeless, husbandless, she never dared dream of a day like this. But now, though life was still hard, she had built a family not just with her children, but with Keisha, Aunt Ruth, and a community that embraced her. James Carter arrived at the gate holding a large gift bag. He wore a light blue shirt, his blonde hair neatly combed, though his blue eyes still carried traces of worry and hope. It had been almost a year since he received the DNA results revealing he was 60% of sub-Saharan African descent, and that his biological father was jazz saxophonist Leroy Brown. Since then, James has changed. He had come to the park every Sunday with books, toys, and an open heart, trying to build a bond with Nia, Noah, and Naomi. Today, he had been invited to their birthday party, a significant step, but Amara kept her emotional distance, not ready to let him in fully. Amara greeted him with a nod, her voice steady, no longer cold. He smiled, handing her the bag. He said, "I brought a few things for the kids," pulling out a set of colored pencils for Nia, a dinosaur model for Noah, and a music book for Naomi. Amara nodded toward the corner of the yard. "Put them over there. They'll open them later." James obeyed and knelt as Naomi ran to him, hugging his legs. "Mr. James," she squealed, and he laughed, lifting and spinning her. Noah and Nia came closer too. Noah showed off a balloon, and Nia shyly offered him a paper flower she had made. Amara watched, her heart wavering. She saw the tenderness in how James played with the children, how he listened to Naomi sing, or patiently nodded, while Noah explained dinosaur facts. The children had grown fond of him, even though they still called him Mr. James. But Amara couldn't forget the garbage bags he'd left on Aunt Ruth's porch, or the words he spoke in the hospital. "They're not mine." Though he had apologized and had tried, the wound still lingered. She didn't know if she could ever fully forgive him, but she knew her children deserved to have him if he continued to earn his place. Keisha stood beside her and whispered, "He's trying, but you don't have to rush." Amara nodded, smiling faintly. "I know. I'm doing this for the kids, not for him." Aunt Ruth, sitting nearby, took Amara's hand. "You've given them a home, Amara. That's what matters most." Her words were grounding, reminding Amara of what kept her standing through everything. As the sun dipped, everyone gathered around the table to sing happy birthday. Nia, Noah, and Naomi stood in the middle, grinning wide as they blew out their candles. James stood beside Amara, eyes shimmering with emotion as he watched the children. After the song, he handed Amara a small photo album. "I made this," he said softly, "for the kids. And us." Amara opened it. Photos of James as a child. His blonde hair, his skin darker than she remembered. A picture of Leroy Brown, playing saxophone. His smile perfectly mirrors Noah's. Then there are more recent photos, Nia drawing flowers, Noah pushing a toy cart, and Naomi singing. On the last page, a handwritten note. "I lost 2 years, but I'll spend a lifetime making up for them." Amara closed the album silently, but her eyes glistened. "They still don't call you Dad," she said calmly. James nodded. "I know. I'll wait as long as it takes." She looked at him, sensing the sincerity, but kept her guard up. "Keep showing up, James. For them." As the party ended, Amara and James stood near a pile of balloons, watching the children chase soap bubbles in the amber glow of dusk. "They love you now," Amara said quietly. James smiled, eyes misting over. "I love them more than anything." She took a breath and added, "You hurt me, James, but they healed me." He looked at her, his voice trembling. "Have I lost you forever, Amara?" She didn't answer. She just watched the children, a faint smile on her lips. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she was strong enough to face it. That night, Amara lay on the couch, holding Naomi in her arms, watching Nia and Noah sleep peacefully. She thought of James, of Helen, of Leroy Brown, the father James never knew. She whispered to her children, "You are the light of my life, and I'll always be here for you." In the soft glow of the lamplight, Amara felt at peace. Truth had triumphed, not only freeing her children, but freeing her. James might be part of the future, but no matter what, she and her children would always shine.